Professor Luciani, welcome to Muscat.
Thank
It's
you.
a pleasure to have you here, and I'm really thankful for your time. This is supposed to be a casual meeting. Feel free to interrupt me.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I would like to introduce you, if you allow me. Professor Luciani is known for his contribution to the Rentier estate, and he was head of Gulf Research in Geneva. He is a senior researcher to the Gulf Research in Qatar, is it?
In Jeddah.
In Jeddah. And you are also a member or working in the science politics, the School of Science Politics in Paris.
Yes, the Sciences Po, which is the school, the Paris School of International Affairs. I teach there.
Yes, and then your focus is in the Middle East and North Africa. You have done a lot of study and publication in the area of geopolitics, oil, and let's say a focus in the Gulf area, especially in Saudi Arabia. Anyway, welcome to Oman.
Thank you.
We are going to cover some of the points, hopefully, today in this casual interview. I have sat with you for, let's say, twice, and you were emphasizing in two main points. One of them is I see it a very valuable advice, is it's time for the Gulf country to reconsider or look into not depending on relying on the cheap labors, and introducing technology on some of the activities that can be done by the locals and giving them opportunity. The other important things which is coming from, let's say, non-Arab researcher, telling the Gulf countries that they should cooperate and have regional cooperation when it comes or it serves their initiative or the repetitive, let's say, trial on the economic diversification. There is, let's say, misunderstanding or not a clear understanding between economic diversification and financial diversification. Today, and I guess both of us agree that we are living in unusual circumstances. We are 5 years or 6 years after the Arab Spring.
Yes.
The Gulf countries facing the similar, let's say, similar challenges like, the drop in oil price, the demographic change, more than half of its population youth demanding jobs. And then we try to cover the recent let's say, events of the geopolitics and the role of Iran in the Middle East, the role of Oman within the Gulf countries, and its relationship with the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I would give you free start.
Thank you. You have presented me with a very challenging set of questions.
I see.
Let us start from the first one, which is dependency on expatriate labor and the need to reform labor market in the Gulf countries. I think this is now absolutely necessary and unavoidable and cannot be deferred any longer. It is clear that initially when at the onset of the oil boom, when the oil price started rising in the 1970s and the transformation of the Gulf began to take place, it was necessary to be able to experience accelerated growth. It was necessary to rely on expatriate labor. Otherwise, the mechanism of the so-called Dutch disease would have prevented any development and would have created excessive inflation and increase in prices in the Gulf. So people were allowed to come in, were even actively sought, and this has allowed the completion of much of the infrastructure of the construction and of the also new administration, new agencies, new institutions. However, at some point you need to start protecting your own labor force. Yes. and finding jobs for your own labor force. A situation in which there is basically almost no limit to reliance on expatriate labor, especially expatriate labor from countries where wages are very low, in especially countries in South Asia, for example, where wages are extremely low, and these people are willing to come to the Gulf and work for wages that are sufficient for them and to satisfy not only their needs, but the needs of the families that they have at home, but would not be sufficient to satisfy the needs and the living standard of nationals. And therefore, they create competition for nationals in all the workplaces. And in the end, you have the situation that we know very well, whereby the nationals, especially the young nationals, remain unemployed. They cannot find a job.
Yeah, but what's the harm in having cheap laborers in the construction activities, let's say? I mean, why would a wealthy citizens or citizens who's living in a wealthy country would go for the low-level job and not in the middle-level job?
Well, because basically this distinction between low-level and middle-level, jobs are not necessarily what they are. Yeah. There are processes of change, and when the wages increase, companies are encouraged to introduce mechanization, to introduce machines, to introduce new technology. They increase the productivity of the workers in this way, which allows them to pay higher wages, but also changes the nature of the job itself. It's no longer a non-qualified job. It becomes a job where you need to have skills for operating the machines or the production process. So what we see is a constant improvement in the quality of jobs, of most jobs, with very few exceptions, which is due to the introduction of more advanced technology and improvement in productivity. If you maintain an abundant supply of labor at very low wages, the companies have no interest, no incentive to invest and improve the quality of jobs. So yes. It becomes a disincentive. And of course, this is not true everywhere. There remain jobs that many people would not like to perform. And we have this phenomenon in all countries, and this is always an opportunity for people from other countries to come and
so
offer.
If I'm getting this right, you are saying that reduce the dependency on the cheap laborers, try to give those companies an incentives to introduce technologies in some activities, so those kind of jobs and it should be attractive.
Yes, exactly.
To the locals.
If through the through the use of machine you can substitute 10 unskilled positions with one skilled position, that position will be able to pay a much better wage. It will be a much more interesting position. And generally speaking, it will be able to attract the national workforce. This is what needs to be done. And there are many, many positions that are today occupied or functions that are performed by unskilled expatriates, which could be performed by a reduced number of more skilled nationals.
If you ask me, I wouldn't see really a big issue or an issue that can't be solved when it comes to unemployment in the Gulf region, because those countries produce jobs for non-locals, which is to me it's a strange situation, and I think by training their locals and giving them the right market skills, it shouldn't be a difficult situation for them to have jobs.
Surely the situation clearly is not one of lack of jobs in absolute terms.
Yes.
There are plenty of jobs, except that those jobs are taken by non-skilled
Yes.
expatriates. I insist on the non-skilled because, of course, there are also expatriates that perform skilled functions or professional functions, and those are necessary as well. The point is, however, that there is excessive reliance on unskilled workers, and this must be cured, must be addressed, and the only way to address it is to impose higher cost for employing unskilled workers. And this can be done in several ways, but the best solution is to progressively increase the wages that are paid.
To give a good example, we are being today photographed by young Omanis who were ready in 2 hours.
Absolutely, we have an entirely national skill,
Yes.
entirely national team,
Yes, and they're very
crew
creative.
here, and I think that's very refreshing. But
Yes, it is.
I am sure that there are many other functions and professions that can be performed by nationals, which are instead performed by expatriates. So, I mean, there is nothing new about this. You know, talk about Omanization or Emiratization, Saudization, wherever you are, you know.
Yes.
Has been around for a long time.
Yes,
Except that the matter has not been pursued, I believe, with sufficient determination. You know, there is always fear that you will lose competitiveness if you allow wages to increase.
To me, those local programs, either they are Omanization or Saudization or whatever you call them, to me, they should be a human resource development strategy instead of employment, because the aim should be much more, I would say, deep than only creating jobs. There's supposed to be creation of pool of talents.
Yes.
For the country. It is
Of
not
course.
just a matter of putting percentage here and there and maybe trying to impose those percentage on foreign companies without actually, you know, qualifying those nationals with the right skills and to make them really competitive when it comes to those high-skilled jobs.
That is perfectly correct. You need to engage in a process of training, of education and training, but, you know, I think that a lot of that has been done in all of the Gulf countries.
In oil sector, in the banking sector, we have it. So they were good examples.
I think there are multiple examples, and I think there have been multiple efforts, including to train the workforce for jobs in industry and in other areas where today it's almost entirely expatriates that work. The two processes must go in parallel. I don't personally very much believe in setting percentages.
Yes,
I mean, because that only leads to cheating of various forms and potential for corruption, and you have to be careful about this.
Yes.
I believe that you know, the way of achieving this objective is by way of progressively increasing wages, introducing minimum wage, introducing minimum conditions for work. It's not just the wage, it's also the rest of the conditions, working conditions that are important. And you must protect the rights of expatriate workers in such a way that it becomes less attractive to employ expatriates relative to employing nationals.